Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Waxcast, episode 28. I am sorry for the delay. We've had a bit of a break here at the Waxcast, and by we, I mean myself, because it's just me. But I am joined by a friend today, so I'm not alone. I'm happy to welcome on to the Waxcast a member of the communications team at the infamous Project Veritas and a native Brazilian. So we're going to be talking a bit about what Project Veritas is doing and a bit about Brazilian politics. I want to welcome on Mario Balaban. Mario, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Gavin, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of your work. I've been following you for a while now, and very glad to finally be a part of this podcast.
Well, no, thank you. And you're probably the best dressed person on the podcast so far. Usually I'm in pajamas. So I'm glad that I am at least wearing some jeans today to match your suit. But it is what it is. But I wanted to bring you on because obviously Project Veritas is in the news like crazy. I believe James O'Keefe just finished a hit on Hannity talking about more to come, bigger companies than Twitter. You guys are obviously taking a hammer to the big tech monopoly known as Twitter, run by its Rasputin lookalike Jack Dorsey. So, what can you tell us about the work that Project Veritas has done to uncover the bias and the evil doings of these globalist corporations?
Yeah, absolutely. So Project Veritas has been investigating big tech companies for a while now. Twitter, this is not the first time that we've exposed them. In 2018, in January, we launched several videos in a series exposing Twitter. You might be familiar with the term shadow banning.
Correct, yes.
That term came about because of our investigation in 2018. A person was recorded by our journalists talking about how they shadow ban people. People shouldn't know how they're getting banned, and all this covert ways of censoring political speech. And this most recent Twitter investigation wasn't undercover journalists, actually. It's people inside Twitter that are feeding us information. People are tired of the censorship, the lies, the corruption inside their institution. They're simply fed up and are saying, Project Veritas, has our back. They're going to publish our information. They care about the truth. And they come to us and they just sent us a video. I think it was Thursday, early morning on Thursday last week. By Thursday night, we had published it, went viral. And today we launched our second piece. So,
and it sounds like more to come, more to come. I mean, you guys are actually doing journalism, which is surprising given the climate in this country today, where, your outfit just doing pure traditional journalism, following the facts, following the fact patterns, investigating leads, uncovering, what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, you guys get labeled by, whatever kind of pejorative the left finds in vogue now. You guys are right-wing extremists, you're propagandists, you're liars, etc. But what you just pointed out, shadow banning, a concept that's very widely known today, never would have been uncovered had it not been for the work of Project Veritas.
That's exactly right. And, we will, like you said, we do have more coming. Big tech, not only from big tech, but people in government, people in media, all sorts of different spheres of our, social institutions are coming to Project Veritas with information. So you can expect a lot of big stories from Project Veritas across the board this year. I can tell you that.
Are you worried, given the changing political dynamics in this country, with Biden coming in, now big tech seeming to reign supreme? Are you guys worried about, being deplatformed yourself, being banned yourself, being targeted by, malicious prosecution, whatever you want to do? I feel like, you guys are challenging the status quo. People aren't going to like that, and they're going to want to lay the hammer down on you.
No, absolutely. That's been a concern for us for a while, that we could be deplatformed on several of these big tech platforms. Here at Project Veritas, James O'Keefe well, we don't shy away from a fight. We're not scared of being censored. We know exactly what they want us to be scared of them. They want us to be intimidated by them, and we're just going to double down on the truth. There's just no point to fear them. If you can, like you said, we can do. Any one of us can be deplatformed at any time. So why would we shy away from telling the truth at any time? So we have considered it. We even talked internally here, will this Twitter video be the one that finally gets us off? But no one here had any doubts that we had to publish it and move forward and do the right thing.
Has Twitter been trying to uncover whoever it is your mole is, or multiple moles? I mean, are they on an investigation internally trying to, figure out what's going on?
Well, actually, I don't know if they are. I haven't heard any information specific to that. But I do know that there is precedent of insiders that have come to us that the company, instead of actually fixing the issues that we brought to light, instead decide that the problem is not the corruption we exposed, but instead the people that came to us with the corruption.
Right.
So
Very typical.
something that does take place, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's how Twitter is dealing with this as well.
That's a typical corrupt response from a corrupt institution. I mean, anywhere in the world, could be a government, could be a corporate entity. Rather than tackle the what's being exposed, the underlining ethical issues, they challenge and they go after those who shed light on it, which is what you guys did and what the brave insiders did at Twitter. Now, beyond big tech. I mean, you guys have obviously been doing a ton of work with electoral fraud, which was a big topic this past election cycle. In fact, people want to talk about evidence. I mean, everyone's always talked about evidence of election fraud, of electioneering, of manipulation of the ballots, of buying ballots, etc. You guys had a massive story out of what was it, Minneapolis, with the local Somalian community, buying and selling ballots and engaging in all sorts of nefarious activities. And it seems like you guys did all the investigation. And where was the FBI? Why didn't they follow up with this? They're doing all this work to uncover, the horned Viking at the Capitol. But where are they with what you guys exposed?
No, exactly. No, it's really upsetting. The evidence is so clear on the Minnesota ballot harvesting videos we launched. The man is literally filming himself on Snapchat with 300 ballots inside his car. Like, he is self-incriminated. We didn't even record that. He recorded himself.
Right.
And the media went off saying, defended him. They even ran a Fox 9 local TV interview with the man saying, please tell us how you're innocent and let us help you make sure that people believe that you're innocent. That's basically the kind of stuff the media does today. There is no voter fraud. Don't worry about that. Like you said, the FBI and a lot of authorities had the evidence in hand, didn't act on it. But in some, a lot of people feel hopeless about that stuff. But I'll say this. We did a massive Texas ballot harvesting voter fraud story in October, a few weeks later after the Minnesota story, and just the Attorney General announced the arrest of one person in our video who basically told us that she was harvesting and manipulating thousands of ballots. So there are some good people who actually investigate voter fraud, but like you said, there's plenty that do not.
Well, that's fantastic. That's a great story, what you just said, because it leads to real world action and consequences. And it goes beyond just shedding a light. It actually leads to justice being served. So I'm glad that that's happening. I'm glad we have, some states like Texas that actually know how to run their election laws, or rather enforce their election laws, unlike places like Georgia and elsewhere. But it's incredible that the media would be running cover and trying to get these people that you caught on tape in their own words and their own actions, trying to run cover for them, run interference, because they hate the notion, they hate what it means in the grand scheme of things. So it's absolutely ridiculous. But and beyond that, what else is in the works for Project Veritas in terms of broader buckets? Actually, before I jump on that, I actually have to say, because we're talking about the media, give Project Veritas credit, because you guys actually put on your website the few times you ever were wrong or you guys actually made a mistake. How many actual media outlets would ever do that with all their BS headlines and all their ridiculous stories? They always do a correction at the bottom of the page in the smallest of prints, well after the story is past its expiration date. But you guys, you're honest. You come out and says, listen, we've been doing this for several years. Here's what we did wrong. We own up to it, but here's all the things we did right. And at least we're being honest. I mean, that's a great thing.
Yeah. And the other thing is also the media will, come at us for different, James, before he started Project Veritas, settled a lawsuit because we literally didn't have money to pay for a legal battle at that time. He was 25 years old and they never let go of that. But think about how many lawsuits the media settled all the time. Think about the Covington kids, for example, the Covington Catholic kid, one of them, Nick Sandman. Right. And, like you said, since James started Project Veritas, we do have on our website a list of, a few things that we regret doing in the past. But also, we actually never, as an organization, Project Veritas, ever settled a lawsuit.
Yep.
Ever settled a lawsuit. So I don't think the media has any backing or standing to be attacking us on lawsuits and morality or anything when our record is a lot cleaner than theirs.
No, that's a great point. I mean, you guys are almost like a litigation machine on top of the investigative journalism work you do. And I think, I'm speaking politically because I'm a political person. You guys are not. But, winning in court, winning litigation battles against the left is actually an important tactic that the right should really use more in their day-to-day affairs, because the left does it, the left sues, the left wins their lawsuits, and the Republicans, we always play defense. So it's good to stick to your guns, stick it through to the end, even if it costs an arm and a leg. At least when you win, you validate your work, you protect yourself, and you send a message to everyone else not to mess with what you're doing, because you're doing great work. Now, back to my original question before I drifted off there. What else is in the works for Project Veritas outside of maybe big tech and the election stuff that we talked about? Anything else that hasn't been mentioned?
So big tech is always a big one for us, mainstream media as well. As you know, we did the CNN tapes in December. One thing we do want to focus on this year, and we do think we'll be very successful in, is getting government insiders, people within the DHS, people within the State Department, people within the DOJ. Those people, those whistleblowers, because they have a lot more at stake. They have the government coming after them if they, blow the whistle on their organization. It's not as easy as it is for a private company to do that. So we definitely want to incentivize government employees, local, state, or federal, to come to us and expose the corruption that we will more. If I had to guess, there will be a lot more to expose this year than in a lot of years past.
It's a sad state of affairs. I mean, it's good for what you guys do in terms of shedding a light on all of this, but it's certainly going to be very depressing as these revelations come out about how broken and morally bankrupt our institutions are at the federal, state, and local level. I think the times of Americans having faith in their institutions, having faith in their government, trusting the system, trusting the plan, so to speak, is long gone because of all the stuff we've witnessed over the last 4 years, and even before under Obama and Bush. It's just really cut at the heart of Americans, respect for our government, which, in some ways is a good thing, some ways is a bad thing. But it's akin to say, I'll make a segue here, maybe other countries around the world that have had longer histories of corruption, that have longer histories of, people in higher office doing nefarious things. You look to Europe, you look to Latin America, you look to maybe your native Brazil, which for many years obviously suffered under corrupt leadership, particularly from the left. What is going on in Brazil? I'm curious because I do bring on a lot of guests who give an international perspective. We had someone talk about Italy. We've had people talk about Poland. I'm curious what's going on in Brazil right now. It seems Mr. Bolsonaro, who I'm a big fan of, has been doing a great job down there. He's running a tight ship, so to speak, and his movement is very much akin to what Trump has in the United States, and it has a lot of popular appeal. Am I right in characterizing it as such?
That's exactly right. And Brazil has a very interesting history, like you said. From early 2000 up into 2016, we had openly communist socialist presidents in power. They were, pro-Cuba, openly pro-Maduro, all that stuff. They were removed by forced impeachment from office in 2016. There was a substitute that came in, the vice president at the time. And then 2018, the election happened again in Brazil, and Bolsonaro won that clearly. Brazil faces similar situations, problems as the United States. Voter fraud in Brazil is a very big issue. It's been for a long time, since 2014. People do not trust the electoral system in Brazil in any way whatsoever. It's all voting machines, by the way. It's all of them are not Dominion, but it's called Smartmatic.
Which owns Dominion.
Right, and they're also used in Venezuela, by the way.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
Used in Venezuela, by the way. So I don't know how anyone can trust that. So that's one thing that Brazilians are facing with. But like you said, Bolsonaro is very similar to Trump. He says what's on his mind. He fights the establishment. Politicians don't like him. His backing is solely the public, the people who voted for him. He doesn't have the special interest groups. He doesn't have the lobbyists. He doesn't have any of the corporations on his side. And he's fighting a very tough battle now, especially with Trump leaving office. That would be very difficult for Bolsonaro. But I know, knowing a lot of people in government there and people close to him, that they're not giving up on their principles and their beliefs because of difficult times.
No, that's great to hear. And I think it actually puts things in perspective in a few different areas of what you just said. One, Brazil could go from, 16 years of leftist control to have someone like Bolsonaro in power. That's a good thing. It's good to see that there's always hope. There's always optimism. You can always turn things around even against all the odds. So I think people in the U.S. have to maybe grasp that we may be in for a few rough years, but there's always a rebound, that things will always balance out if you keep the faith and you keep fighting. Yeah. And then two, a lot of the things things that we're finally realizing, because these things have been going on, election fraud, voter fraud, this kind of government corruption has been going on in the United States for a long time. It used to be more localized and regionalized to, the big urban centers, the cities, the Chicagos, the New Yorks, the Philadelphias. Now it's more widespread, sadly. But many other countries deal with the same thing. And it just goes to show these are legitimate concerns. These are legitimate issues that shouldn't just be, brushed aside as conspiracy theory, because they happen. They have massive impacts on society, and they should be dealt with in a fair-minded way that examines the facts and seeks, truth and justice. I mean, we can't have a proper country if we don't have a proper election system. I mean, I don't think that's crazy to say.
Oh, you're absolutely right, Gavin. I would even go to your point. And a lot of people have asked me, how I feel about how the direction of this country. Obviously, I'm very concerned. I think I've seen. I lived in Brazil up until I was 13. I've seen what left-wing policies do to countries, and I've seen this movie before. I've told people I've seen this movie before. I've seen how this thing goes, and what their plans are, and how they move their agenda, and how effective and how intelligent they are about this. They're not. People who think the leftist organizers are stupid or anything have no idea. They're very talented and very good at what they do. And they're when it comes to power, there's no one better at acquiring power than leftists. That's absolutely a fact.
We've learned that the hard way. They wield power. They crave power. They know how to use it when they have it and effectuate it, so they get more power down the line. It seems like at least the right in the United States, and particularly the Republican Party, they care more about what happens within their own party, about maintaining control, rather than the power dynamics between the two parties. And then when they are in power, they're more worried about how they're perceived than actually winning or actually using it to actually take action on their mandates. So it's always a shame, and that's why I'm worried because the next few years, because the left have shown, as you just said, that when they do have power, they use it. They make sure they use it, and they don't miss any opportunities. Meanwhile, the right is always tripping over themselves and fumbling. That's why people like Trump and Bolsonaro were such a breath of fresh air in the West, because they were leaders who, no uncertain terms, have some balls, have some chutzpah, and are willing to do things.
Yeah, and I would even add to the point of where the country can go. I think Brazil and Venezuela are very good case studies for the United States. Obviously, they're very different countries and come from very different pasts. And Brazil and the U.S. actually have a lot of similarities people don't know of.
Yeah,
but I would say, politically speaking, Venezuela and Brazil are very interesting case studies because the Venezuelan communists, right, took power. Maduro and Chavez took power over a span of time. They got elected in 1998, 99. Chavez died in 2013. Maduro took over, and they never were able to get rid of Maduro. Brazil had the communists came in about 2, 3, 4 years after Chavez got power in Venezuela, but they were kicked out of power. So why do I think that happened in Brazil, but it didn't happen in Venezuela? I think that there's a dynamic here that we have to understand, and I think it applies to the United States. It's that how quickly can leftists consolidate power and eliminate opposition compared to how quickly can conservatives wake up the rest of the country as to what's happening.
Yep.
So I think what happened in Venezuela is people did not wake up fast enough to the consolidation of power of the left, versus in Brazil, people woke up just in time. And I mean literally just in time before it. I mean, if you went to Brazil from 2015 through 2016, 17, everyone you could talk to in the street, I mean this seriously, are more anti-communist than Americans. People in Brazil on the street, you couldn't even say, if you said you were a socialist or a communist in the street of Brazil in 2015, 16, 17, and even now, obviously, but even mostly then, because people were so worried of becoming Venezuela, people literally were, and I was worried Brazil would become Venezuela. It was a matter of shame. They parade themselves as these glorious, noble people in college campuses in Brazil. It was a thing of shame. You would hide the fact that you were a socialist communist. So I think that the awakening of Brazilians was unbelievable, and that's, in my opinion, something that might end up having to happen here. Is that I think the left might do some stuff that are just so outrageous that the only way we're going to change that is if there's a massive awakening that they can't stop or put down.
No, those are some great points. I mean, it's always really a battle against the clock, so to speak, like you said, because they're going to keep, consolidating and expanding their power base and structure in the right. If they're asleep at the wheel, that's how you end up with a situation like Venezuela. But I also like the cultural and societal points you just made. Maybe you could describe what's going on the ground in Brazil. Maybe it has to do with, it's still a very religious country, Catholicism, even evangelical Christianity is there, which is another parallel to the US. And it has they've maintained some of these traditional cultural traditions, which have sort of cemented themselves against this sort of perverse left-wing agenda. I mean, we're seeing in the U.S., it's really they're going after the culture more than anything, because they're twisting the minds of young people, they're twisting the minds of they're twisting what's going on in the mass media and pop culture, and they're turning people against their own country. They're making them hate themselves. They're making them hate their nation, their family, whatever it is. And it's really that's the path towards this sort of totalitarianism.
No, and that's exactly what the left learned. I think going more in the philosophical, historical background of the left, I'm a person who studied them very closely and tried to understand how they're so successful. And a lot of people have to understand that this is a movement that didn't come out of yesterday or didn't just recently start. These are ideas that they just had to start. These are things that have been in place for decades. There's a man called Antonio Gramsci. I'm not sure.
From Italy, from Sardinia.
The Italian communist. He's a guy who said, why are communists in the world trying to have these armed revolutions in countries and trying to overthrow governments by force when we can just infiltrate their institutions and literally turn them against their own people? And that's a lot more effective than just trying to pick up guns and go to the government buildings and try to take down the West. That's not.
It's a Fabian strategy. It's slowly spreading like a parasite and just corrupting the country from within. And I mean, many people throughout history have always written about this, that many of the greatest nations, empires, countries, whatever, they collapse because of internal pressures, not external pressures. Because they weaken the morale, they become demoralized. As the Soviet dissident said, who I cannot remember his name right now, Yuri Bezmenov. He's talked about, the KGB strategy of demoralizing the United States, infecting their schools, infecting their institutions, weakening the minds of the future generations. So when the threats emerge, they're too weak to stop it, or they're fully on board with whatever that threat is. In this case, it's the sort of radical leftism. So it's really disgusting. And then there's another country we could talk about from Latin America with a lot of similar parallels. You look at a place like Argentina, which was once the jewel of the Western world. It was once almost as prosperous as the U.S. It was almost the California of Latin America. It had many immigrants like Brazil and the United States. Everyone wanted to go there. They wanted to live there. It was very prosperous. And they've had similar decades of this sort of left-wing, oligarchical, corrupt kind of mafia-run state where the people lose their livelihoods. They're just basically bankrupting the country, and leftism has just taken over. And they're in a really bad state. They're not as bad as maybe Venezuela, but they're up there. Not a lot of people talk about them.
No, it's exactly right. I mean, there's something I think you might find very interesting. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this group, but this organization called the São Paulo Forum.
Okay.
Are you familiar with them?
I'm not.
Okay. So to understand the communist movement in Latin America, there's you'll be very interested in learning about this. The São Paulo Forum was founded in 1990 by all the communist parties in Latin America. Basically what happened was the Soviet Union fell. Cuba was now receiving their usual funding from the Soviet Union. Cuba was getting bankrupt. So Fidel Castro realized the only way we're going to survive is if we have support from somewhere else. We're not getting money from the Soviet Union anymore. Where are we going to get funded? We're bankrupt here. So they started slowly building ideas. They would meet every year. Every single communist party in different countries of Latin America would come to meet in different places in Latin America to organize ideas and plans to take over. So every time you hear the Bolivarian talk in Venezuela, that originated in the Sao Paulo Forum. That's their idea, was to make what they had in the Soviet Union, which was Russia and all those other eastern states, into the Latin America would be one state. So Mexico all the way down to Argentina would be one Soviet state. That was the plan, to replace the Soviet Union. They were succeeding in that very well. They had Chavez, Brazil, Argentina,
Bolivia.
So Bolsonaro was the biggest, exactly. Brazil is the biggest dent in their plans by far. Bolsonaro actually put a big stop on that movement. But like you said, unfortunately, countries like Argentina, I'd say even Uruguay, not so much Uruguay, but Ecuador and a lot of other countries. Chile now doesn't even have which was an example, is also falling apart.
Chile's drifted so far from what they did and how they turned that country around and really made it prosperous. It's sad to see what's happening.
Right. So Argentina, I think there's a historic reason beyond just the Sao Paulo Forum movement that they were successful in doing in Argentina. I think there's a historic reason as to why this is. this movement called the Peronista movement, right?
Yeah.
Originated with Perón. He was a fascist.
Yeah.
And he was a very had
flamboyant, had a lot of charisma, etc.
Right, that, but he also had very socialist economic policies. So basically, if you look at Kirchner now in Argentina,
it's the same
they
thing.
call themselves Peronistas. They embrace these fascistic ideals from Perón. So they have that origin in the 40s of bringing down this state mind, the collectivist mindset in Argentina, but paired with the rise of communism and their cultural agenda that they've succeeded all around the world, but in Latin America so much, they've really fallen apart, and I really think Argentina is close to becoming the next Venezuela very soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad. I saw they just they legalized abortion up there, and they were all in the streets like losing their minds, like it was this big beautiful thing, when it was pretty gross and disgusting. But it's sad what's going on. It's sad because people tend to forget history. They don't learn from history. They don't learn from the past, and they don't understand what's going on. These big picture games behind the scenes. It's a lot of power dynamics. It's a lot of really contemptible behavior to really distort and twist society to the wishes of these crazy ideologues who go back, like you said, all the way back to Gramsci and even before. I mean, many generations of various left wingers. I mean, you can't even all call them communists. They're all different. Right. They come in all different shapes and sizes. They all have different viewpoints and different agendas. But it's great to see, at least in Brazil, there is some hope there, and Brazil is on its way to becoming a real world power. I mean, it is a large nation, has a large population, has a ton of natural resources. I mean, it is in a good position to really, now that the world seems to be shifting into a more multipolar dynamic with many different countries, vying for supremacy. It's not just the United States. It's not just Pax Americana. It's not just Russia or the United States. Obviously, China's up there, but places like Brazil, India could be new emerging powers, and I think that's a good thing, right?
I think it can be, depending on Bolsonaro and the conservative movement can survive the attack. The left is very resilient there too.
Is he term limited?
What's that? Yes. He runs for re-election most likely. He will run for re-election next year.
But then after that, it's done.
Yes, exactly. It's the same thing in the U.S. 2 terms of 4 years.
Exactly. Now what? But he's not affiliated with a party, is he? He's like an independent or something.
Exactly. The party system in Brazil is ridiculous. There's it's not even a parliamentary system. It's a presidential system
with a bunch of parties.
There's tons of parties. So the parties mean nothing almost. Like only the left-wing parties mean something there.
Right.
All the other parties are useless. They have no meaning. They have no ideology. They're basically there like, okay, I got elected. I'm in office. Perfect. Let me make some money off of this. Let me make a bit.
Right.
So either you're an actual leftist in a left-wing party, or you're in a party to make business. So Bolsonaro is like, I'll just be, and they force you to be in a party there, right? You have to be in a party to compete. You can't just run independent and all that kind of stuff. Right. So it's like you basically have to attach yourself to something to be able to even run. So it's a very weak system and very, very broken in Congress for sure.
Do you think he'll run? I mean, do you think he'll win?
So again, that's where it's going to be interesting. I think he's very popular. He's leading in all the polls. He's leading. His approval rating is very high. But again, the concern is voter fraud. My view is the left in Brazil is seeing how elections can be very very.
What happened in the U.S.
What happened in the U.S. They're like, okay, if Trump can fall, what stops us from making Bolsonaro fall, right? So they're very incentivized and encouraged to make moves, right? And they're like, who's going to stand for Bolsonaro? Who's Bolsonaro's ally in the world now? It's not.
That's what I was going to ask. Is he isolated? Do you think that there's a sense of now he's kind of in a corner? He doesn't have Trump, and there are other countries are maybe not going to fall in line with him anymore.
Well, certainly he's not self-isolating. It would be some that could definitely isolate him. He's very pro-Israel. Israel's an ally.
Right.
Tries to be friendly with a lot of countries. But yes, I mean, I don't know the answer yet, given that Biden hasn't taken over. But if I had to guess, I would be certainly aware that, Biden basically, I don't know if you remember the debate with Trump, I think it was the first debate, he basically called out Bolsonaro on the debate station. Yeah. The Amazon, I'm going to go and interfere in the Amazon. He basically attacked Brazilian national sovereignty, saying that the U.S. is going to get involved in the Amazon.
I'm sure the CIA will be glad to see him go. I mean, they went from an organization that used to make sure communists stayed out of power. Now they seem to want to put communists in power. It's a real perversion of what's been going on in this country.
It's really sad. No, it's not. So, I mean, again, I am very, very cautious and not optimistic. Now, I wouldn't say cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously pessimistic about what's going to happen. But again, like you said, the only way we lose is if we stop fighting. So we're never going to stop fighting. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear because we need to keep up the fight. We can't let doom and gloom take over. But this has been a great discussion. I'm glad we got to talk about Brazilian politics, about what PV is doing. I want to pass the last word off to you. Please let us know where we can follow you, what Project Veritas is doing, and I hope we can have you back on again in the future to talk about a whole slew of other issues because we could go on for hours, I'm sure.
Of course. No, thank you, Gavin, so much for your time. It was great to be with you. I don't use social. I'm not on Twitter, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed because I was going to try to tag you, and you weren't on there.
No, exactly. But do follow Project Veritas, James O'Keefe. I mean, this is my life here. Like, we love doing this work, and I couldn't be happier to be with this organization in these potentially very difficult times ahead, even for us. They're going to come after us, I would imagine, on all sorts of ways. So I would never, back down from what I'm doing. So do follow us, and we'll never give up on the truth.
Amen. You guys do great work, and I even love that creepy bunker you're in right now with the red light. It's very evil, like Bond villain evil right now, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But anyway, guys, this has been a great episode 28, Mario Balaban, and we are going to have more Waxcast podcasts coming to you soon. I promise there won't be a wait, and don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, and you can subscribe on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever podcasts are available. So thanks for tuning in. More to come soon.